So I've never really been a bar person all that much. I mainly go out to the bars just to make it an occasional thing if I have a good excuse to go or if someone just convinces me. Like I've went out of my way plenty of times to not even drink at the bars and I've actually enjoyed it surprisingly. And believe it or not, um, everyone usually just talks about it like it's a personality trait, but me personally, I've never really cared all that much for the bars. If I was ever going to consider drinking too, I'd ideally just do it at my own place or at someone else's place instead of going out to drink. Much safer, less risk, and I don't even have to worry about struggling to find a way back to where I was at compared to if you were out at the bar. But for me, though, it usually starts off with the actual bar experience itself and the reality of that experience. Going to the bars with a lot of activity going on sounds like it'd be great in theory, but in reality, you're just unable to have any room to do anything. Doesn't help in bigger areas like in the city or non-college town bars more often than not. You usually have a fee to go in, and quite frankly, I'm not even a fan of that either. And if you're expecting to get a drink at a reasonable amount of time at a bar, you're going to learn the hard way the struggle of even being able to get something as simple as a drink. Let me just actually mention a few things to take into account when it comes to being at the bars. So, when it comes to that, the amount of people that are wanting to get a drink besides you are usually going to be a lot because that's the whole thing with the bars is that they sell alcohol for people, and a lot of people like to drink alcohol. Another thing too is that the bartender themselves, one way or another, is going to probably prioritize people that they're more familiar with and people that they know that may be regulars or just close buddies or something of the sorts. Another thing too to also know, this is very common as well. Women just usually have better chances of being able to get served and just get drinks at the bar compared to guys. And if you've been that person waiting to get a drink at the bar and you've been there longer than anyone else, usually a girl's going to get prioritized. That's just the way it is. Now, the worst thing about all that is that you're going to have to sit through it regardless, especially if you don't want to look like a fool, whether you're trying to impress someone or just trying to stay inebriated and keep that going. My actual best experience with the bars was always the bars that didn't actually have much traction going on at them, where you were able to actually sit down and talk with people without having to struggle to hear anyone or be able to say something and people not be able to hear you. One of my roommates and I would always go out of our way to head away from the major bars that were in our area and go to our signature Oasis bar. I'll actually refer to him as Jim to make it easier. So Jim and I usually would go to this bar. We always went to this bar more often than not, even during the time that everyone would be flooding the bars. We'd usually bar hop, of course, but we'd one way or another prioritize going to our spot and eventually get back into the whole bar scene where everyone else is at. It was funny because we actually went to this place a lot and we actually became regulars over there at one point. And the bartender that usually served us, she was super cool lady. She actually called us the PBR boys, so like Pops Blue Ribbon, and I just thought it was great because we were such regulars at that bar. He Jim and I also just having to get close with the person that served us often. We got to like know a lot about her backstory a little bit. She got to know a little bit of our backstory as well. It was great. It was a nice vibe, great area, very peaceful. You can sit down and talk without having to worry about raising your voice. Music was always great. They also usually served food late at night. Bonus points with that. But yeah, we were known as the Blue Ribbon Boys because that was our signature drink that we would get at that bar. And Homegirl just kind of identified us as that, and we were her regulars. So it was always fun to know that whenever we'd go there, she'd usually be working, which was even better because I felt like it would have been a different experience and a different vibe if it was anyone but her. Anyways, Jim and I also had a Tuesday tradition this one semester in college where we'd go to one of the standard bars, right? But it wasn't on like the nights that they were typically crowded and where everyone would be going out. So the nice thing about that was we were able to sit down, we were able to talk, we were able to shoot our shit, and we were also able to just get like a front row seat at the bar. Basically, sit at the actual bar itself. Every now and again, one of our old roommates would be working shift there, and we get to see and talk to him some. He worked security, so we'd be able to talk to him for a little bit, especially on those nights where they didn't have shit going on. Made it even more enjoyable that we got to talk to him and see him whenever he happened to be working. And the other thing too was that we really needed this for our own sanity when it came to that semester with that Tuesday tradition. because there's this one class that we had, and it was just kicking our ass mentally with our sanity. And it was just like the very thing that we were majoring in became the very thing that we just stopped enjoying. And it sucked that that was the case, but it's just, it's crazy how one class like that and that sort of regard can really have an effect like that, especially depending on like who might be teaching it. But that's besides the point. The nice thing about that, though, is that it was peaceful. It was very nice. And sometimes it just feels like having a peaceful experience at the bars just feels like it's asking for too much. I know I just wish more bars had that sort of type of nightlife atmosphere affiliated with it that wasn't just on the weekdays or just a certain day of the week and was, just more common for that type of bar scenery to be that way. And if there is, I probably just don't go to the bars like that as much. I'm sure there's some locations that have that sort of thing, but I'm not denying that the bars can't be fun, even when they do get populated. Like I've had great experiences with both aspects. Whenever it comes to them being busy or not, just usually feels more rewarding after getting some shit done to go out and have a reason to go out and celebrate instead of just doing it all the time. That's why I mentioned earlier. Sometimes it feels like people have their whole personality revolved around the bars. And while getting to celebrate does feel great to do, you also might celebrate a little bit too much and end up struggling at the cost of it. This is pretty much another thing that I'm not fond of when it comes to going out to drink because you kind of forget about your limit factors. And while you're enjoying yourself and inebriated, most likely, somewhere and at some point, a different version of yourself just takes over. And you feel like a ceaseless force where nothing can get in the way of that. But that's the neat thing. Because you're inebriated and you feel like a ceaseless force, you do things you usually wouldn't bother doing otherwise just because that other entity has taken over. We actually made jokes about Dark, whoever, as a joke when it came to their inebriated state because it just was a complete 180 from what we were usually used to with someone. So basically, me, Jim, and a lot of our other roommates had a dark version of ourselves for the simple fact of inebriation. But at that point, you just start to fight your own body, and it becomes an entirely different mission than what you originally planned out to do. And the thing too is celebration becomes a fight or flight for control. And having to get through that can be very uncomfortable, and it is an uncomfortable experience. If you've been there, you definitely understand where I'm coming from when I'm saying this. But you start to pay the price of it all as the night goes on, not only physically, but also mentally. That's at the point where you can no longer enjoy these sort of things whenever you're out like that, just because you're trying to get through the night and survive. At some point, you may start to backtrack to what even led up to that point to where you are now. Either way, your actions got you to where you were, and all you can do is really just think about how you're going to recover and just wanting to go home. Everything just becomes too much, and you're suffering at your own cost. Even when you're done suffering in the pain and exceeding past your limits, you still have more to go for the simple fact that you might have a hangover and you're just on 1 HP at that point when it comes to that aspect of it. And it's a struggle as well, of course. And even then, that next day is usually just going to be a recovery day because you're going to feel horrible and you're going to have a whole case of regretting even going out that night. And what also sucks even more is if you had things planned to do that next day or something important that you had to postpone because of the night before, among many other things, your day has made a 180 because you went out and had a bit too much fun with being in the moment. And that's where the price is paid. Trust me, I know this from personal experience on many accounts, unfortunately. And there is something, though, that I did learn from all that, though. And it's just prioritize recovering because I know if I had puke and rally, I would puke and rally to make myself feel better. And I know that would make me feel better. And the thing is, too, I tell myself a bit of pain never hurts. Ironically enough, a bit of pain never does hurt because you'll be feeling better, way better in the outcome if you just get it out of your system, even if you don't like the methods that you may be using to do such. And that was another thing, too. It was usually my mission after I'd reached my limit and I knew that I went past my limit, whether I knew it or not, to just make myself recover one way or another and go through the uncomfortable experience because I know it would help and it would be worth it in the end. That's just my personal insight that I would give for you to just save yourself a day of suffering and also just potential hangovers is by getting out your system that same night because you don't want to be on 1 HP. You might as well just treat it like a two birds, one stone type of situation. There's another thing too that I do recommend to have when it comes to being inebriated or if you plan to go out ever, just have a contingency plan for that sort of thing. such as having food on standby for whenever you get back, or just be able to have food ready to be able to eat and look forward to. Maybe a shower also can help with rejuvenating. I know I've had done that myself plenty of times whenever I've gotten back from the bars instead of just doing it the next day. More importantly, water, especially water. That's going to be helpful in all of that, especially because if you're consuming a lot of booze, you need to have water to keep those ratios going, and you don't want to fuck your liver up like that. Simple as that. Just look out for your future self, your future inebriated self, to say the least. I'm hoping some of that insight that I provide will become helpful in the future for whoever may be watching this video when it comes to the bar scene or just drinking in general at all. Also, just be sure you know what you're getting into when it comes to the whole bar scene as it is. Simple as that. But funny enough, this next thing actually ties into the parts that I already just mentioned before with the experiences and potential risk. Think of it like this. It's the psychological illusions of the whole bar scene in general. That's going to be the next thing. These scenarios play well when it comes to the whole bar scene in that regard. I'm sure you've been out before to the bars after someone convinced you to go out, and they said it was going to be worth it, only to be disappointed in the aftermath of it all. If you haven't had that be the case either, that's just one example of psychological illusion of just having disappointment after really high expectations and promises. This other example, though, is also another one that can serve as a really good example of the psychological illusion when it comes to the bars. Now, think of this. You meet someone you knew from your college or your work life that you've had just basic conversations with, right? And you happen to lock eyes with them, and at some point, they gesture towards you to go and talk with them, so y'all talk. Things are going well. You're kicking things off the whole night. Things feel like they couldn't get any better. And that's the thing. They just had the courage to ask for their info, and you exchange contact info with them. And you message them just to make sure that y'all both have each other's number saved. And then the next day comes by, you reach out, and then you don't get a reply back until a couple of hours later, okay? Now, that whole night prior never happened pretty much. The thing is, that was another example of the psychological illusion that you have when it comes to that sort of thing. You're thinking that things are going well, and you're hitting stuff off well with someone. But the thing is, you voluntarily got yourself into that, and you depleted yourself of your resources, and you had to pay for a film that didn't last. Hangovers more often than not, believe it or not. And also, you thought you were going to have things go well with someone, and you were able to, take things to the next level with whoever it was that you were interacting with, just for that to not be the case at all. This is also just part of why I don't really bother drinking outdoors and in public, and rather just do it indoors at a place that I'm familiar with. Saves a lot of trouble in that aspect. But if there's some advice that I can give and some recommendations when it comes to this whole bar scene stuff, I have two different ones that I can give you for the end of this video as I'm going to be wrapping it up. Now, this first one is going to be based on not even drinking at all. Just don't worry about being inebriated and just go out sober minded. Have a clear head about it. Hell, and if you want to have more of a reason to do it sober, just DD. I know I just preferred volunteering a lot to DD some of my roommates and friends because I know the whole bar scene in general, trying to find a way back with public transportation, can be a bitch and a half at times. So there's another excuse that could help you with wanting to try it and experience it. Just at least try it if you want to, and if you're not interested in trying it out, I have another alternative in that sort of regard. And that's just consuming while you're indoors before you even decide to go out, because you not only will be able to save a lot of money, you could and would save a lot of money because you're not inclined to spend as much, but also you get all that trouble out the way then, and you don't have to worry about doing it in that moment that you're out there. Maybe if you want to, it's an optional thing that you can just consume some more, but at least you won't be consuming as much as you would if you didn't already get it out of your system prior to that. There's a reason why it's called pre-gaming. I'll say that. But with that being said, I'm going to be wrapping this video up. Thank you for your time watching, and I will see you next time. Take care and have a good one.